First and Second World Wars are often remembered for their massive battles, political consequences, and staggering death tolls. Yet beyond the familiar history lies a darker, stranger side, stories so unsettling that they sound fictional, yet are horrifyingly real. From ghostly battlefields and unethical experiments to psychological warfare and unexplained phenomena, these wars expose the most disturbing extremes of human behavior. 1. Strange and creepy facts about World War I, 1914 to 1918. 1. Soldiers lived among the dead. Trench warfare forced soldiers to live for weeks or months in narrow ditches filled with mud, rats, disease, and corpses. Bodies often couldn't be removed due to constant shelling, so decomposing remains became part of daily life. In some cases, soldiers used dead bodies as structural support for trench walls. 2. Rats grew to the size of cats. The trenches were infested with massive rats that fed on human remains. Soldiers reported rats so large they could steal food from sleeping men and even bite living soldiers. These rats spread diseases and contributed to constant fear and insomnia. 3. The first chemical warfare. Nightmares of World War I introduced large-scale chemical warfare. Poison gases like mustard gas, chlorine, and phosgene caused victims to suffocate slowly, burn internally, or go blind. Some soldiers survived gas attacks only to die days later as their lungs dissolved. 4. Shell shock was treated as cowardice. Psychological trauma, now known as PTSD, was called shell shock. Many soldiers suffered uncontrollable shaking, hallucinations, or muteness. Instead of treatment, some were court-martialed and executed for cowardice, despite being mentally broken by constant bombardment. 5. The unsettling Christmas truce. In December 1914, soldiers on both sides stopped fighting, sang carols together, exchanged gifts, and even played football in no man's land, surrounded by corpses and barbed wire. The next day, many returned to killing the same men they had laughed with hours before. 2. Strange and creepy facts about World War II, 1939 to 1945. 1. Nazi human experiments. In concentration camps, Nazi doctors performed brutal experiments on prisoners without anesthesia. Victims were frozen to death, infected with diseases, mutilated, or subjected to extreme pressure tests. These experiments were scientifically useless, but unimaginably cruel. 2. Japan's Unit 731. One of the most disturbing chapters of World War II occurred in China, where Japan's Unit 731 conducted biological warfare experiments. Prisoners, including children, were dissected alive, exposed to plague and anthrax, and used to test frostbite treatments. Many perpetrators were never punished. 3. The living skeletons of the camp's liberated concentration camps revealed survivors weighing less than 30 kilograms, 66 pounds. Some were so weak they died after being fed normal food because their bodies could no longer process it. Piles of shoes, hair, and glasses testified to mass murder on an industrial scale. 4. Suicide was common among civilians. As Allied forces advanced, thousands of civilians, especially in Nazi Germany and occupied territories, committed mass suicide out of fear, propaganda-induced panic, or shame. Entire families poisoned themselves or drowned together. 5. The Ghost Army. The Allies created fake armies using inflatable tanks, sound effects, and radio deception. German troops reported seeing entire divisions that didn't exist, turning fear and confusion into a weapon of war. 6. The Atomic Shadows. After the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, human silhouettes were permanently burned into walls and stairs. Shadows of people vaporized instantly. These atomic shadows remain one of the most haunting physical reminders of nuclear warfare. 3. Shared creepy realities of both wars. 1. Millions still missing. To this day, millions of soldiers from both wars were never recovered. Their bodies remain buried beneath fields, forests, and cities. Construction projects in Europe still uncover bones, weapons, and unexploded bombs. 2. Battlefields that refuse to heal. Certain areas, like the Zone Rouge in France, are still uninhabitable due to unexploded ordnance and toxic soil. The land itself remains poisoned over a century later. 3. War changed the meaning of death. Both wars normalized mass death on an industrial scale. Soldiers became statistics, and killing became routine. This psychological shift deeply scarred generations and reshaped humanity's relationship with violence. Conclusion: World War I and World War II were not only military conflicts, they were psychological, moral, and existential nightmares. Beyond dates and treaties lie stories of horror that reveal how thin the line is between civilization and chaos. These strange and creepy facts remind us that the true cost of war extends far beyond the battlefield, lingering in memory, land, and human conscience long after the fighting ends. While battles and strategies dominate history books, the hidden realities of World War I and World War II reveal a world filled with fear, madness, and eerie human behavior. This second part explores lesser-known but deeply disturbing truths that still haunt historians and survivors alike. 4. Psychological horror and mental collapse. 1. Soldiers who completely lost their identity. In both wars, prolonged exposure to violence caused some soldiers to forget their own names, families, or even how to speak. Doctors recorded cases where men behaved like children or animals, unable to function as human beings after the war. 2. War-induced cannibalism. In extreme conditions, especially during sieges like Leningrad in World War II, civilians resorted to cannibalism to survive. The dead were eaten, and in rare cases, people were murdered for food. Governments kept these incidents secret for decades. 3. Executions for desertion. Thousands of soldiers were executed by their own armies for desertion or disobedience. Many were teenagers suffering from trauma. Families were often never told the truth, leaving generations unaware of how their relatives truly died. Medical nightmares and dark science. 4. Soldiers used as test subjects. During WWI, wounded soldiers were sometimes experimented on without consent to test new surgical techniques. Survival was not the priority, data was. 5. Nazi doctors obsessed with death. Some camp doctors collected body parts, skeletons, and preserved organs as scientific specimens. Human remains were displayed like trophies, stripped of identity and dignity. 6. Artificial diseases. Both Axis and Allied powers experimented with biological weapons. Infected insects, contaminated food, and engineered plagues were tested, often on unsuspecting populations. 6. Strange battlefield phenomena. 7. Phantom armies and ghost soldiers. Many soldiers reported seeing figures walking calmly through gunfire, untouched by bullets. Some believed these were hallucinations. Others believed they were spirits of fallen soldiers guiding or warning the living. 8. The silence after bombardment. Survivors described an unnatural silence following heavy shelling. No birds, no wind, no voices. This eerie quiet often preceded sudden death or attack, embedding a deep psychological terror. 9. Soldiers buried alive. Explosions frequently collapsed trenches, burying men alive. Some were rescued days later, screaming and clawing at the earth. Others suffocated in total darkness, their cries unheard. 7. Civilians caught in the horror. 10. Children raised in war zones. Many children grew up surrounded by dead bodies, bombings, and executions. Some lost the ability to feel fear or empathy, becoming emotionally numb at a young age. 11. Mass graves. Hidden for decades, entire villages were erased, their residents buried in unmarked mass graves. Many of these graves are still being discovered today through construction or farming. 12. Cities that vanished overnight. Firebombing raids turned cities into oceans of flame. In places like Dresden and Tokyo, temperatures grew so intense that people melted into streets or suffocated in underground shelters. 8. Aftermath. Horror that never ended. 13. Unexploded bombs still kill. Thousands of unexploded shells remain buried across Europe and Asia. Farmers still uncover them, sometimes with deadly consequences. 14. Survivors who never spoke. Many veterans and camp survivors never talked about their experiences. Nightmares, screams in sleep, and sudden emotional breakdowns haunted them until death. 15. War crimes without justice. Numerous war criminals escaped punishment, lived normal lives, and died peacefully, while victims were forgotten. Conclusion. The true terror of World War I and World War II lies not only in battlefields but in what they revealed about humanity's darkest capabilities. These wars shattered minds, erased identities, and normalized cruelty on a scale never seen before. The echoes of this horror still remain in land, memory, and unanswered questions. As the world descended deeper into total war, nations began crossing moral and scientific boundaries that had never been crossed before. In the race for victory, terrifying weapons, secret projects, and unethical experiments were unleashed, many of which were hidden from the public for decades. 9. Creepy weapons that should never have existed. One, flamethrowers turned humans into living torches. Flamethrowers were among the most feared weapons in both wars. Victims often burned alive inside bunkers or trenches, screaming until the oxygen was gone. Soldiers using flamethrowers were prime targets. If captured, they were often executed on sight. 2. Mustard gas burned flesh. From the inside, mustard gas didn't always kill instantly. Instead, it caused painful blisters, blindness, and slow suffocation. Some soldiers survived the war only to die years later from lung damage caused by gas exposure. 6. The Manhattan Project's human cost workers at nuclear facilities were often kept completely unaware of radiation dangers. Some developed mysterious illnesses and died young, never knowing what had poisoned them. 11. Living nightmares behind enemy lines. 7. Cities that became open graves in bombed cities. Rubble buried thousands alive. The smell of decomposing bodies lingered for months. Survivors described hearing voices calling for help from beneath the ruins, long after rescue efforts had stopped. 8. Underground hell. In places like Berlin and Tokyo, civilians hid in underground bunkers during air raids. Fires consumed oxygen, causing people to suffocate silently in total darkness. Entire shelters were later found filled with bodies, untouched by flames. 9. Forced suicide missions. Kamikaze pilots in World War II were given ceremonial drinks, farewell letters, and symbolic headbands before flying to their deaths. Many were teenagers who had never flown combat missions before. 12. Disturbing acts of desperation. 10. Human shields. Civilians and prisoners were sometimes forced to march in front of advancing troops to discourage enemy fire. Many were killed anyway. 11. Fake medical care. In some camps, hospitals were merely places where the weak were gathered to die or be selected for experiments. 12. War turned doctors into killers. Medical professionals designed more efficient killing methods, calculating how long it took for gas to kill or how much pressure the human body could endure before collapsing. 13. Secrets revealed. Too late. 13. Destroyed evidence. As defeat approached, many regimes destroyed records, laboratories, and bodies to hide crimes. Entire truths vanished in flames. 14. Scientists recruited instead of punished. Some war criminals were secretly recruited by victorious nations for their knowledge, allowing them to escape justice in exchange for expertise. 15. Survivors who were silenced witnesses were threatened, ignored, or discredited. Many stories only emerged decades later, after those responsible were dead. Conclusion. World War I and World War II did not just change borders. They transformed science, warfare, and morality in horrifying ways. Weapons became more cruel, experiments more inhumane, and death more efficient. The wars proved that when fear and ambition dominate, humanity itself becomes the greatest casualty. Even after the guns fell silent, something unsettling remained. Soldiers, civilians, and historians have long spoken of mysteries surrounding both world wars. Events that defy logic, moments of chilling coincidence, and places that seem trapped in time, still echoing with suffering. 14. Unexplained Mysteries of the World Wars I, The Vanishing Battalion, WWI. In 1915, during the Gallipoli campaign, a British battalion reportedly marched into a strange, low-lying cloud. Witnesses claimed the cloud slowly lifted, and the soldiers were gone. No bodies were ever found. Official records later listed the entire unit as missing. 2. Soldiers who predicted their own death. Numerous letters and diaries contain chilling final lines where soldiers wrote they would not return or felt an overwhelming certainty of death, only to be killed hours or days later. 3. The Phantom Airmen. Pilots in both wars reported seeing planes flying silently with no markings, appearing suddenly and vanishing into clouds. Some believed these were hallucinations. Others believed they were enemy craft never recorded in any military logs. 15. Creepy coincidences and twisted fate. 4. The same battlefields, same deaths. World War II battles were often fought on or near World War I battlefields. In some cases, unexploded World War I shells killed World War II soldiers nearly 30 years later. 5. Brothers killing brothers. There are documented cases where soldiers unknowingly killed relatives fighting for the opposing side. Some only discovered the truth after the war, through dog tags or records. 6. Escaping death, only to meet it later. Many soldiers survived horrific battles only to die shortly after the war from illness, suicide, or accidents. Survivors often said the war had never really let them go. 16. Abandoned and haunted battlefields. 7. Forests that still kill. In parts of France, Belgium, and Eastern Europe, forests hide millions of unexploded shells. Trees grow twisted from poisoned soil, and animals die from chemical contamination more than a century later. 8. Villages frozen in time. Entire villages destroyed in the wars were never rebuilt. Roads lead to nowhere, and signs warn visitors not to enter. These places remain eerily silent, officially erased but not forgotten. 9. Battlefields that breathe. After heavy rain, human bones, helmets, and weapons still rise from the soil. Farmers often stop working when remains surface, reminders that the ground itself is a grave. 17. Disturbing survivor testimonies. 10. Nightmares that never stopped. Many veterans woke screaming decades after the war ended. Some relived battles every night, while others refused to sleep at all. 11. Survivors who felt guilt for living. This survivor's guilt crushed many who lived while friends died. Some believed they had stolen someone else's life by surviving. 12. Silence as a defense mechanism. Entire families grew up without knowing their parents' wartime experiences. Silence was often the only way survivors could continue living. 18th, war's shadow in the modern world. 13. Remains still being identified. Modern DN. Attesting continues to identify soldiers lost in both wars. Families receive closure a century later, sometimes with no living relatives left. 14. Weapons that still activate. Old chemical shells occasionally leak gas, forcing evacuations even today. The wars are not truly over. They are only buried. 15. History that refuses to stay buried. Each new discovery, bones, diaries, mass graves, reopens wounds and forces the world to remember what it would rather forget. Conclusion. World War I and World War II did not end when peace treaties were signed. They linger in soil, memory, and unanswered questions. Their strangest and creepiest facts remind us that war leaves behind more than ruins. It leaves shadows that stretch across generations. As the wars dragged millions toward death, what remained behind were not only ruins and graves, but words. Letters written hours before death, diaries hidden beneath floorboards, children born from violence, and moral boundaries that once broken could never be fully repaired. 19. Last letters and final words. 1. Letters written before certain death. Many soldiers wrote final letters, knowing they would not survive the next battle. Some calmly described the weather. Others apologized for not coming home. Many ended with phrases like, "Do not be sad," or "I am not afraid anymore." These letters often arrived days after the sender had already died. 2. Letters never delivered. Millions of letters were never sent, found in pockets of dead soldiers or buried with them. Entire conversations ended mid-sentence, frozen in time. 3. Parents writing to dead sons. In some cases, parents continued writing letters to sons long after they were missing or confirmed dead, unable to accept the loss. 20. Hidden diaries and forbidden truths. 4. Diaries buried to survive history. Prisoners in ghettos and camps buried diaries in jars, bottles, and boxes, hoping someone would find them. Many wrote knowing they would die, desperate for the world to someday know the truth. 5. Children writing about death as normal. Some diaries written by children describe executions, bombings, and corpses as part of daily life. Innocence disappeared early and never returned. 6. Truth that was too horrifying to publish. Many diary entries were censored or hidden for decades because governments feared public outrage or shame. 21st. Children of the War. 7. Children born from violence. Millions of children were born as a result of wartime rape, forced relationships, or occupation. Many were rejected, hidden, or abandoned after the war ended. 8. Orphans who raised themselves. Entire generations grew up without parents, raised in ruins or institutions. Some never learned their real names or origins. 9. Children who never spoke again. Many war-affected children stopped speaking entirely for years due to trauma, some permanently. 22. When morality collapsed. 10. Killing became routine. Soldiers described killing as work. Numbers replaced names. Death lost meaning, not because people didn't care, but because caring became unbearable. 11. Ordinary people committed atrocities. Teachers, doctors, clerks, and neighbors participated in violence. The wars proved that cruelty does not require monsters, only obedience, fear, and silence. 12. Science lost its soul. Medical and scientific ethics were shattered. Knowledge advanced, but at the cost of human dignity. 23. The war that never truly ended. 13. Trauma passed through generations. Children and grandchildren of survivors often inherited anxiety, nightmares, and fear without ever experiencing war themselves. 14. History still hides. The full truth: documents remain classified. Mass graves remain undiscovered. Many victims are still unnamed. 15. The creepiest truth of all. The most terrifying fact is not what happened, but that it can happen again. Final conclusion. World War I and World War II were not only battles between nations, they were battles against humanity itself. They revealed how fragile morality is, how easily fear reshapes people, and how deeply suffering can echo through time. The strange and creepy facts are not meant to frighten us for entertainment, but to warn us, because when history is forgotten, its darkest chapters are always ready to be rewritten. History often cleans war into dates, maps, and victory speeches. But beneath those polished narratives lie stories so disturbing that many were deliberately buried. This part explores the unspoken, uncomfortable, and deliberately forgotten realities of both world wars.